Oh, sorry.
Oh well.
Okay, anyways.
Secret conversation got out into the public. Oh well.
No, I just hit record, so we're okay. Hey, everyone. We weren't talking about anything important.
Just Star Trek hats.
Mm-hmm.
About Star Trek hats.
All right. Hi, everyone. Michael Dismuke. I am a freelancer for Star Trek Adventures RPG, lead writer on Captain's Log RPG. I am speaking very technically, and we will tell you why in a moment. All right, let me introduce Jim Johnson.
I will leave the technical speaking to Michael. Hi, I'm Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG and the Captain's Log solo RPG and a bunch of other stuff at Modifius Entertainment, and co-host on this here show for solid years and running. Lots of episodes behind us, lots of episodes ahead of us. And tonight we're talking about all kinds of cool technical Star Trek-y stuff. And we have two guests with us tonight, no strangers to this show at all. So I will let them introduce themselves for the most part. But Al, go right ahead. Mr. Successful Al, in your win. Tell us all about
it. First time on the show since the Sentience Kickstarter one.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. All right. So, hi, everyone. I'm Al Spader. I'm a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures. I'm also the creator of the Sentience role-playing game. We have had a successful Kickstarter on that. And as this goes out, we should be starting to send out our PDFs and possibly shipping if layout goes correctly. So that's pretty
fastest Kickstarter fulfillment ever, I think.
Yeah. So anyways, that was a big deal. And I also wrote a role-playing game called Once Upon. So yeah, excited to chat about our topic tonight.
All right, and congratulations, Al. I haven't told you enough, but congratulations on everything with Sentience. Super excited to see that come out into the world and get more bodies checking it out and playing it. All right, and our second guest.
I'm Aaron Pollyea. I'm kind of a long-term Star Trek Adventures writer. I tend to focus on science, technology, and starships. I'm really happy to be here.
All right.
This is one of my favorite topics.
Well, let's start with I'll borrow music from another franchise, 2001. And I'm going to raise this up and see if all those watching at home know what this is and what year this came out. I'm holding up something for everyone at home. It is a black cover book with a plastic lining front. It says Starfleet Technical Manual on it. And up there, Aaron has his up and ready to go. There we go. And inside, I'll just show a little sneak peek of the inside for those of you at home. Some of the most beautiful schematics in here. This is one of the shuttlecraft. I mean, the schematics in here still stand up and hold the test of time. So this came out what year? Does anyone off the top of their head know?
I'm not going to look at my copy, but it must have been 74 or 75.
75, same year I was born. Yeah, same year I was born. This is as old as me. Oof. I hope I don't look this beat up. Look at the yellowing over here. Are my teeth do my teeth match? I can't tell. All right. Okay, good. That's one book. Okay, the next book. Here comes the next book. Oh wait, actually no. Yours, Jim, would be the next one.
Where did I put it? Here it is. Yep.
Yeah. So Jim's gonna hold that.
Scott's, yeah.
It's related.
Oh wait, no. Jim's first. What is that, Jim? What are you holding up?
Star Trek Spaceflight Chronology. This is a 1980 production, shortly after the motion picture came out, and I think even before Wrath of Khan. I think Wrath of Khan was 82. So this is even before. And check out this. Rick Sternbach did a lot of the.
Oh, that's awesome.
Illustration. What does that book cover?
What's that?
What does that book cover?
Oh, it covers a lot of prehistory of Star Trek and a lot of information about spaceships and a lot of technology involving the spaceships. Again, this was also 1980, so some of the stuff has been adjusted, but this was kind of the foundational type of stuff.
Right. And Al, what were you holding up now?
So I've got Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise. This is 1987, just after Star Trek 4 released. And again, plenty of schematics and technology stuff in here as far as a lot of the motion picture refits and whatnot. And in fact, the first section is actually entitled refits. So it talks about any updates that have happened to the Enterprise. So
I got to get my hands on that one for sure.
I think that one has a really cool section on the food processors on board that actually gives a menu listing.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Correctly. Yeah.
All right. And then, of course, I think every Trek fan of the 80s and TNG would know this beauty, which is, of course, I mean, the Bible of technical manuals, I would say, right? Like everyone's holding theirs up, right?
Yeah.
Rick Sternbach, Michael Okuda, right? This is amazing stuff right here. Exactly. I mean, I have it marked. I can't tell you how many times in the 80s I read this book as a kid, and in the 90s. Oh, sorry, this came out in 1991. So in the 80s, Star Trek Next Generation started. How many times in the 90s I went through here and read it and knew way too much about transporter functions at warp and stuff. We'll talk about more of this, I think, today as we go through.
I'm willing to bet I'm not the only one who's worn out a copy and is on their second.
This is my second one. My first one had duct tape on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, until it fell apart. Al, you had oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
Al has a follow-up book too to this.
You have a follow-up? Yes, this DS9 Tech Manual.
What year did that one come out?
98.
Yeah. I loved this one because it really expands out the technology into what it looks like in stations at a larger scale. And it has much of the same stuff as you see in the old technical manual, but you see that, we have got the maps with the, Cardassian look to them. And mine's still flagged with all the references that I was making when I was writing for our technical manual. So
yeah, DS9 Tech Manual is full color, unlike the next gen one, which was black and white with one color in it. I think there's a lot of blue in there.
This is another one I referenced for the topic we're talking today, the Star Trek Voyager. This is 2020 actually, so this is pretty recent, but beautiful illustrations, beautiful cutaways in here of the different vessels. Definitely the technology, like the Astrometrics lab. So again, another pretty good technical one in easier understandable language that matches our generation, our Gen X and millennial generation. All right, and why are we talking about this, Jim? Why are we showing
I do want to note that Voyager, there are companion volumes just like that for the Enterprise D, the original Enterprise, and DS9. Because like all those cutaways and schematics and art, like all that stuff is available was available to Eagle Moss at the time, Hero Collector, and they made all those wonderful volumes. So those are all the spiritual successors to the tech manual from 91, and now we're here to talk about the next spiritual successor to all of those books, bringing Star Trek adventures into the modern era of actually I guess we should say bringing Star Trek role-playing technology into the modern era, because none of those books focused on any of the new Trek, right? Like Discovery, Lower Decks, Picard, etc. And that's why we're here. Go ahead and show it, Mike. You got it on your.
Well, I gotta say too, I think what's why I like this so much, not more, but why I really like this one is because not only, yes, does it bring technology into the role-playing arena, but it actually talks about the technology in very understandable language for people who are new to the genre. They don't need to try to understand Okuda's amazing and Steinbeck's amazing Technobabble from 1991. If your players need quick hits, a couple paragraphs on what technology does, we took a special effort standing on the shoulders of these great giants that we talked about in order to make it understandable, digestible, fun, and still not so much Technobabble that you can't take it off and make it on your own and that you can't tailor it for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, and we also added that RPG lens to it, right? Like, so casual Star Trek fan can pick up this new tech manual, enjoy it for what it is, a technical manual, really focused on all the technology, all the cool stuff that you've seen in the series and that you've seen all across the franchise. But also for those of you who are actually playing the game, there is stuff in here that will help you. So it's not just a phaser, but why is this phaser important for my players and my game and everything. And we can, and that's something that you can't get on, memory alpha, memory beta, memory gamma, the other tech manuals and stuff. Is that extra little bit of gamey stuff.
And there's one other thing you did when you designed this, Jim, when you came up with the overall concept design, is you made it compatible with Captain's Log. How so? We're going to talk about that today, right?
Captain's Log and first edition. Of course, yeah. First edition, second edition, not that far apart, but this
more
book,
matrices.
Yes, more tables, more fun random tables. You guys love your random tables, and we love our random tables up to a point. and you'll find a whole bunch more random tables in here, especially complications. Gus, those complication tables are so much fun. And as we've seen on our games, like I know you're doing it with the games you're running, Michael, but also that game you're running with us on the Challenger. Complications and traits are the big things that are forefront for second edition, and there's just more opportunities to use this book to create those complications if you need a lift, right? Like I think we all have seen over the last several years of talking to gamers on social media. They need more ideas for traits, values, and complications. So hopefully these random tables will help give you more ideas to get creative.
Right. And just a special shout out to two writers who couldn't make it here today, who contributed to this: Nathan Dowdell, and of course, who big on design of the game of 2E. So had a lot to do with this. And Dayton Ward, of course, the world renowned Star Trek novelist, did have a lot of input, but could not make it tonight.
Yep. Both of them made huge contributions. Sorry they're not here, but their love of Trek is suffused throughout the book, as is ours, of course, but it's all there.
All right. So how do you want to tackle this tonight, Jim? How should we go through the review of
gosh. Let me pull up the PDF on my other screen here. Or not my other screen, but my other I don't have two screens.
Can I start with a question for Jim?
Of course.
Go for it.
So one of the things that was really interesting about this book for me, Jim, was the fact that we kind of narrowed it down to just 5 or 6 writers, as opposed to like the core rule book where we had 2 or 3 times that many writers. How's that make your job different? Like like when we're putting together a project and things like that, how does that change your job and what you do for the line?
That's a great question. That's a very project managery type question, and it makes sense coming from you since you're project managing sentience and some other stuff. Yeah, I think purely from a project management point of view, the fewer the fewer bodies on a project, the less paperwork you have to do. So it means fewer purchase orders, fewer invoices, fewer cats to wrangle, right? I am blessed that all of you are very good at taking your assignments, meeting your deadlines, and having overall very clean copy. So it makes it easy to edit, makes it easy to revise, makes it easy to go reach out to you and say, hey, I need 50 words here, or your intro sentence wasn't quite strong enough. Can you beef it up a bit? It's easy to make quick fixes, and it's easier to wrangle 5 writers than it is to wrangle 10 or 15 or 20 or like whatever ridiculous amount of writers I had on other books, right? So it's useful sometimes to keep it lean and mean in terms of staffing. I mean, me personally, all things being equal, I would have made this a 300-page book and invited everybody. Yeah. but the reality of the budget and the timeline just meant I had to be really intentional about what I was doing and what I wanted to put in the book, and that meant with this one having a really strong outline from the beginning and saying, okay, Michael, you write this and this, Al, you write this and this, Aaron, you write this and this. And my question back to you guys would be to say, unlike other projects where your assignments were this chunk of this chapter and this chunk of this chapter and this chunk of this chapter, make it happen. And then me having to go back and kind of weave that all together. In this book, it was like, okay, Al, you go write chapters 4 and 5. Aaron, you write, 7 and 8 or whatever the assignments were. So instead of getting chunks of chapters to work on, you guys were actually given full chapters to work on. So I'd be curious to hear from your, well, first, Al, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was great. And I was actually going to follow up with that and saying, like, one of the things on my end that was really cool was I knew exactly who was writing what it's because of the outline. So if I was like going to start talking about transporters when I was writing, I knew that I would go to Aaron, who was also talking about, internal ship mechanics, and say, hey, did you write stuff about transporters yet? And he would say, yes, I've got this in there. So like we were able to like check on each other and make sure that we weren't being too like overly exposed to different parts of the technology. So that was really, really helpful.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Excellent. And yeah, so my follow-on question is very similar to that. It was just to say, as writers, what was your experience getting the assignments for this, which were specific chapters as opposed to specific chunks of chapters? Like, how did that impact your workflow, your research? Like, how did it impact you, either positively or negatively? And whoever wants to start, go for it.
I think it helped in some ways, in that if I get a small chunk of a chapter, and usually the word count might be a little more vague in that case, because a lot of times you don't know exactly what the other authors are going to be writing for that chapter, and they might be under or above word count. So when I have vagueness, I tend to overwrite. Let's be fair, I'm that kind of person. So when I was given a chapter and here is the word count, it was tough, because in general I can always fill pages, but it made it easier to really try to focus in and cut down what I was trying to say to something a little more focused.
Yeah, I'm kind of control freak. So in projects, I really like to have full ownership of something, as opposed to trying to like if I have like the first third of the chapter and someone else has the second third and then third, my biggest concern is voice. Does it sound the same? So that always freaks me out when people are dividing up chapters for me. So I really prefer to have an entire chapter I can dig in. And then the way we work together, as you know, Jim, is we share our work with each other so we can decide if it's redundant. And I think I ran into that with Aaron because he was working on starship sensors while I was working on tricorders. So I wanted to make sure not to have too much redundancies with that. So personally, I love getting a whole chapter so I can be focused on that.
Yeah, and it gives you flexibility within that chapter too, right? Like you can come up with a vision and execute it. Like I knew that I was doing medical technology, and I was able to define what that looked like, pitch it to Jim, and he's like, "Yeah, let's roll with it. We'll keep what we can." And so like knowing that whole section was mine, I could keep the flow going in a direction that I felt made sense. I thought that was very, very helpful, having the whole chapter just to do that.
Okay. Nice. Cool. So I mean, folks, clearly you hear the passion that we all have for Star Trek and for technology, and just how technology has been presented in Star Trek. I think as the project manager, I don't do much writing on the books or on the line anymore compared to what I did, 8, 9 years ago when I first joined the line. But I do reserve the introductions for myself. I write all the introductions, and I had a lot of fun with this one because it gave me an opportunity to reflect on the totality of Star Trek and how technology has been so important to the franchise for so long. And so you'll see that I've taken a slightly different approach to the introductions for some of these new books, and really wanted to lay out the broad non-gaming kind of perspective on, like, Star Trek's been around for 60 years, and it's a cultural icon, and and here's some of the reasons why technology is so important, not just for Star Trek but also Star Trek technology, how that has impacted and influenced modern society, right, and the world. And so I think I really tried to pour a lot of passion into that, and I knew that all of you coming in as writers shared a lot of that. So this book, I really wanted this book to be not just a overview of all the different cool gadgets that are in the show, but just a celebration of Star Trek, right? There's so much cool stuff that is in Star Trek that, if you think about it, is also in the real world. And I just thought maybe we could just go around real quick and just have everybody reflect a little bit about the amazing technologies that we've seen on screen that have then found a way to be translated into real life. And you're like, oh, that got started in Star Trek. Like, Michael, just you showing off the cover of the pad, right? I mean,
yeah. I have my pad here, and I want to add to some of the things you added in that same chapter in the intro was about the ethical considerations and the conversations that are happening and evolving now, like say for instance around AI, and like Star Trek started that conversation. They've been talking about AI since A Measure of Man, and bringing that up. So I really appreciated because it makes us think when we're viewing technology nowadays, are we trekking it? Are we thinking about the advancement of human society in a trek way or out of fear and paranoia? So I really appreciated, in addition to talking about the actually hardcore technology that we can touch and feel, just the psychology of technological innovation that Trek started.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's been so much in Trek, and lots of times we hear technobabble or medical babble or whatnot, and we kind of just like play it off as that. When a lot of what is being said is has some basis in reality. And I think that as writers, we decided with this book that we wanted to give a voice to some of those things that you hear when you are talking about medical babble or technobabble or things like that. But like when you look at what the EMH says when he's repairing someone's injuries, and they talk about like a dermal stimulator, like those, like we can use that to encourage the healing of lacerations and wounds and things like that. I mean, auto sutures are essentially, we use lasers to close, wounds and things like that. So I think that when we heard about this project, I think we all wanted to give a voice to some of those words that maybe some people might just toss away as babble, but like really talk about what it means and what's actually happening.
Yeah, I'm gonna second what you said, Al, because again, Technobabble. I love Technobabble, but I love Technobabble not just because it sounds cool, but it does mean something, and usually it's consistent through all the shows, and it directly references ideas, concepts, technologies that are actually around today. It's just that it's in a science fiction setting or a more fantastical setting in the show. Your RCS thrusters. Well, there's been RCS thrusters on every spacecraft built that we have had built since the 1960s. So how does that work? How does it translate to the 23rd and 24th centuries? What are they like? That's just an example, but I love how it's rooted in reality. And then we just imagine how far it can go.
You actually make a really good point, because I think the difference between this book, which I'm holding up, which is the 1991 Star Trek technical manual, the audience for this is so different than the audience for the new technical manual here, because the level of sophistication of young people. I was thinking like, I don't want to say we dumbed it down, because we sure did not, to talk about the technology of Star Trek. But I think now that I think about it, it's the young people are so sophisticated when it comes to technology that if we don't reference real science that they know, STEM, then it doesn't even sound like science fiction at this point. It sounds like fantasy, right? And so I know when I wrote it, and sounds like the rest of you did too, I was bouncing off current technology. Like, we can't just say a tricorder works. You have to really kind of get into what kids already know, or the modern generation, about all the fantastic sensors that we actually have flying around in space and scanning us in the airports and scanning our foods coming off ships. We have these things, infrared, so it's written in a way where I think the player who picks up this guide or the casual reader can go, yeah, okay, totally possible. Boy, I wish it was that small, and I wish it was in space.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I agree. I want to have it rooted in reality, uh, and just to inspire people to think about how they can apply something that maybe we didn't write about into Star Trek, whatever that might be. Hey, I have this really cool idea for X, Y, or Z. How can I trek it? How can I expand it, and then think about how it has progressed over a couple centuries?
Love it. Love it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael.
I just had a question for the group again. When writing this, then I know I leaned on the old manuals for sure, because I wanted to make sure I was kind of keeping with what they said about the technology in the past. I didn't want to just fully make it up on what I assumed. So I know, for instance, like going to both the Voyager handbook and the Star Trek technical manual, I was double checking myself to make sure I wasn't in conflict, though I was rewording it for Mars. So I'm wondering, how much did you all lean when you looked into your technology on those resources too?
I think I leaned pretty heavily into it, especially the TNG technical manual, just to make sure that I hadn't contradicted it, since it's arguably one of the best sources for really kind of nitty gritty detail. Not that I've ever really found myself screwing it up, because I mean, I read that book, 100 times before I was even 20. So, take that how you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like when you get into especially I know in the engineering chapter which I worked on, when we talk about diagnostics and transporters and things like that, a lot of that information, was I found in the technical manuals, because they very clearly lay out step by step how it all works. I did reference a lot of like memory alpha, memory beta, and even like some like fan blogs of just to find lists of the different types of engineering equipment that have been used in Technobabble. And so like I took, a whole section in here just to say, all right, well, what is this thing, and do a little paragraph about it. And there were some of those objects that Aaron and I tossed a couple of ideas back and forth on. What do you think this thing means? What do you think this would do? And so on and so forth. So I love the technical manuals were like my safe place. But digging into like some personal blogs that are like the top 20 medical devices in Star Trek, like that's where you find some really cool stuff, and they all would all have like episode references and things like that. So that was where I spent a lot of my time as well. I did a lot of research for this. It was a ton of fun.
Good. And as always, I want to encourage people, though, don't feel like it is law. If you want to come up with your own devices with your own names and please do so. That just makes it more fun. Though we may be, we may have had to do this level of research just because we're paid to. We want you to have fun. So don't stop, or don't not make a how should I say, if you see something in there and you want it to do something, let it be. And if you want to make up new tools, please do that too. It's just a framework, right, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we collectively did the research so that you don't have to, right? We presented it, put a fresh look on it, and hopefully in a lot of places connected the dots in ways that haven't been connected before, right? Talking about uniforms and replicator technology. I'm just glancing at the one of the chapters that Dayton wrote. I really enjoyed his sidebars about replicators do have limits. Here's some information about replicators that have limits that I'm confident were based on the original or on the next gen tech manual, but now we've got another 20, 30 years worth of Star Trek since then that has continued to advance those replicator technologies even into the 32nd century, right? And so Dayton was able to take that full broad spectrum and bring it up to date, basically. So there's just a lot of great stuff in here. And again, like all of our Star Trek books, adventures books, we don't create a lot of stuff whole cloth, right? And make you think, oh, is this canon or is this beta canon, like whatever. Like everything is based on the show, based on the series, based on the movies, because we want you to take the baseline and then go do wild, crazy, like Michael said, don't take this as gospel, right? I mean, if you don't like how a replicator works, then change it for the purposes of your game, right? That's okay. You can do whatever you want to do, but we're providing you a really strong baseline and hopefully some of the reasoning why this stuff should work in the universe for the purposes of your characters and your player characters and stuff. Yeah.
let's have some fun now. Let's talk about what we all love the most out of the book. And I know for me, it's not going to be everything I wrote, because I went through and finally got a chance to see the finished book. So let's go around that. Maybe you have Easter eggs or stuff you're like, hey, pay attention to this. Why don't we go around? We'll go Aaron, Al, Jim, myself, and we'll just go around a couple times, maybe 3 times each, just to talk about just some quick highlights that people should grab onto this book for. So go ahead, Aaron, start us out. What did you
I think you should really pay attention to the character blurbs that are at the start of every section. I personally had a lot of fun writing the ones that I did, but that's because, I tended to write the engineer character, and he was directly being a Tellarite in a lot of ways. And so I had a lot of fun doing that, but I think they tell an important story. Each one of those can be a jumping off point for an adventure in some way, shape, or form for your game.
Yeah, I think something that I was surprised to see in here, but was kind of a little bit flattering, that I thought was kind of cool, was we knew that that there was going to be a section on like player options and ship options and things like that, and the rules for mines has been updated to 2E in this book. And so like that was something that I personally created in Utopia Planitia, and to see that it was well accepted enough to be updated into this book felt really, really cool. And I'm excited that it's here, and I can't wait to hear stories of people doing some pretty scary things with mines in outer space.
I've never heard someone so proud that they're going to be decimating NPCs.
right.
I'm touched. Okay. Good, Jim. What about you, Jim?
Well, I mean, gosh, it's hard because
we're gonna go around a couple times. So just go ahead and give us one.
The big highlight, not the big highlight, but a highlight for me is how much work Ariel, our art director, put into the artwork in this book. I mean, he and I worked together with the art briefs, and we came up with some concepts together and stuff. But this was like, well, I mean, all of second edition really, he's really had the opportunity to shape the look and feel of this line from the beginning, from that core book, right? And there's some art in here that is just like, when he sent me the sketches, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then he sent me the final, and I'm like, oh man, how am I, how, and I had to hold myself to not share it with you guys, because like, you're behind the scenes, I share stuff ahead of time a little bit with you all, but I knew I had to sit on some of this. So, and Michael, I know you appreciate art, because there's such great stories in all these pieces of artwork. I think I was so excited that I'm pairing up all of your collective awesome text with this awesome artwork, and going in with Michal Cross's graphic design. So I'm just really excited to see some of the new artwork get into the 2E stratosphere, especially the slice of life stuff. I think we didn't do enough like slice of life incidental kind of artwork in first edition. It was often pew pew fighty starships blasting, and nothing wrong with that, right? But because second edition is so much more focused on the characters and traits and like what is your life like in this universe, I really appreciated some of the slice of life artwork.
Can I add to that?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, Al blames you for the art on page 28. He swears that's your art brief.
It's actually 25.
25.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that slice of life, Jim. Absolutely. I think it's page 78 that we see like Orion's playing poker or something in their starship. But is that a 23rd century Orion tanning bed? Mm-hmm. That made me laugh. I thought that was funny.
Right. And I was like, do they get gamma energy in order to get the color of the green, or is it UV? Like, I was like, is that gamma?
It's like a regenerative bed. It's a tanning bed, but it actually helps them, help
green up.
Yes, good catch, Aaron. Nicely done.
All right. And you were the art brief about Packlets, weren't you, Jim?
I might have been responsible for
it. Yeah. So as we continue going around, so I admit one of the things, I got to do chapter 3, which Jim knows I love diplomacy. I love the HR of Star Trek. So I thought this was cool that I had to come up with technological things that command characters need to be mindful of. So the universal translator, for instance. And honestly, it was so fun for me researching the origin of the universal translator and lingua code, taking us all the way back to Enterprise and Sato. So I love Enterprise. The more I watch it, the more I like Enterprise, especially seasons 3 and 4. My favorite because of some characters in it. But doing the history of lingua code, but I love language. Anybody who knows, I work in communications. And so being able to break down how languages are formed. And on page 49, the alien language encounter, I plan to use this from now on in all first contact scenarios. Roll the dice and see how complex is this new creature's language, and set that up as a complication for your command characters with language abilities, maybe your science officer. So really check out the Universal Translator section. I did go and look at the technical manual about how the science works, but behind the steps it takes for a universal translator to function. So there's a new extended task that's on there that you could put on people who are trying to decipher a language. And then my favorite thing in the chapter is, of course, the quote I was able to pull from of Jenkum Pog. Oh, whoa, you understand Jacob Pog? Wait, Jacob Pog understands you. How? So it was fun to grab a Prodigy quote from there.
Yeah, and just to tie into that Prodigy quote real quick, I was really glad we were able to fit in artwork of Jenkum at the beginning in the introduction. It just worked out that we had a little bit of space, and we have, of course, access to the art assets from Paramount and Nickelodeon stuff. And I was like, oh, hey, we have a quote from Jenkum Pog later in the book, so why don't we sneak in a little Jenkum Pog right here at the beginning, and just show that the books are all Star Trek. All Star Trek is part of this game and part of the franchise. So we want to make sure we at least provided some touchstones to everything. And in fact, you'll see his multi-tool is in one of the end papers with some schematics. So that was just fun to drop him in there.
Well, and don't forget page 51 too. Again, I try now that Jim really is like, give people something to use when you're designing each one of these. So on page 51, it's think outside the talk. So since we have no budget in playing the game, get out of verbal linguistics. I'm fluent in American Sign Language, so I understand that you can have a whole language without any vocalizations. So on page 51, there's all these different types of ways creatures speak that we know of. And so feel free to design creatures around that. That can become a game in itself, no pew needed.
Yeah, and Michael, I that in reference to that sidebar on page 51, I will apologize to you in advance, or I guess not in advance, but that sidebar was probably half again as long in manuscript, and by the time we got to layout, I was like, oh, we're not going to be able to fit all of it. I got to figure out how to trim it, and I tried to keep the coolest options in there, and they were all cool, right? It was all really interesting. I was like, I'll find a way to use this all in my game, but so my apologies that I couldn't fit everything in, but I tried to keep the good stuff. I mean, the very best stuff. It was all good, but yeah, great sidebar. I really appreciate that you all take your assignments, but then you always try to go to the next level. Like, how can I make this really cool and different, and give players and game masters something different to think about and to play with. And hopefully, they'll go do some amazing stuff with it.
And if you need an example for that particular sidebar, look at the second adventure in the starter set campaign, because there's an extended task all about it.
All right, Aaron, give us something else. What else would you highlight as one of your faves?
Well, I enjoyed figuring out ways to break technology in the complication section. How to not be too specific about a problem that might directly relate to the exact events in your episode, but more of a general broad-based way of breaking a piece of technology to make things a little more difficult for the characters in your campaign. Yeah, it was a challenge to kind of thread that needle, but I enjoyed actually doing it. It was a lot of fun because I can talk about technology for a long time, but talking about how it breaks is a totally different thought process.
I love those sidebars. I loved all those about that you wrote. Al, what else you got?
I think when I got the medical section, I thought very early on in my my process, I was thinking that I wanted to represent IDIC and accessibility. So I knew that I wanted to talk about like Pike's support chair and the hover chair that we see in Discovery Season 3, I believe, at the end, because I know that's really important, because we have people that play the game that might be in chairs themselves, and they might want to play a character that does the same thing. So we go into what do the chairs do, what functions do they have, and what is the purpose of them. And I felt like that was really, really important to get in there at the start of the medical enhancements chapter. So, and we even got a picture of someone in a Monster Maroon in a wheelchair, I believe, earlier on in the book.
It's a Vulcan
too, awesome.
yeah. So. I love that picture. I'm like, what's the story? Is he by himself on an Archer class ship trying to figure something out? I love that scene. I wish I knew the story behind it. Jim, do you know?
Well, that's the wonderful thing, Michael, is you can take Captain's Log and a piece of art from books and tell your own version of the story. Make it up.
All right, what else you got, Jim? What's another highlight?
Well, I think I'll stay on that. I got two I want to mention, but just for this round, I'll say that I was really hoping we could keep them in just because of spacing, but I'm really glad we were able to get in as many complications tables as we did for all the different technologies we talk about, whether it's tricorders, phasers, life support systems, shields, transporters, whatever. Every major piece of technology that we talk about in the book, we tried to include a complication table, a D20 complication table, so that while your group is going through a story, and you got a piece of technology, and as a game master, or maybe as a player, you want something to break, or you roll a 20, or you roll within your complication range, instead of trying to come up with something on the fly, because I know that's a struggle for some folks. Lean on the tables, and like Michael said at the top of the show, use this as a supplement for Captain's Log, or use it to supplement your first edition or second edition games. And I think I just love these. I love these complication tables, man.
The other day, so I was playing a little Captain's Log with myself once I got this, and what I did, Jim, is I said, okay, my shedding is the ship, and I'm going to go through each complication table in order, and I'm going to just keep rolling, and that will become my story. I said, if I just did that, and just every time I have to roll a complication, I go to this next subsequent one, what kind of story would it be? That was just like, so there's so many options came out of it. So that was cool. All right, good. On page 59, I had to do research on the retinal tricorder. In fact, I had to look this. I was like, wait, did I ask for you for help on this, Aaron, on the retinal tricorder?
Ooh, maybe.
Because I was like, I remember researching it because we first see it in Discovery, really, is where you see them being able to tap the side of their head and blink in certain things in order to get access to it. But as I read it, I was like, did I write this completely? Because I may have asked you to help me out on it. I can't remember. But for those of you playing in the 32nd century, oh boy, these are cool. And we see it nowadays, like in like Mission Impossible movies and contacts with HUD displays and stuff, HUD displays. So if that was
just a neural interface that projects the HUD onto the inside of your eye. So I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
And honestly, I think if there's a new Star Trek, if Star Trek was being written now new, this would probably be realistic technology in 200 to 300 years, because it's starting now. People are already, for instance, being able to look at a screen and get it to move and change right now in computers. So I think we're actually probably just 10 years off from this. So I could see actually bringing into my game a retinal tricorder in any game of Star Trek, if tell you the truth. All right, back to you, Aaron.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, sorry.
It's interesting that in a lot of ways, modern technology is actually surpassing where we thought we'd be with Star Trek. I mean, that's cool, right? It shows, I think, any science fiction show that's going to be out there, I mean, even books, they're going to get dated because technology moves so fast, and gets changed so fast. But I think some of the stuff in 32nd century is still pretty cool and out there, but maybe not for long. I have to
Well, even like the nacelles that are apart. I mean, already magnetics are being used in machines like maglev trains that you don't have to touch part to part. That's already here, So it's not that far, which is interesting, which makes Star Trek a little scary, believable, And yeah. What else you got, Aaron?
Well, I'm just thinking about the retinal tricorder now. Now that you mentioned that, like, why wouldn't that be a thing in the 23rd century, 24th century? Because I mean, we see the pieces of the technology that are there already at that time, and I'd argue that maybe there's a reason for that. That most people feel that you don't want to have things inside your head unless you absolutely have to, because hey, look, I'm used to duotronics. Duotronics generally have big chunky components. Why do I want to change my body when I can have a device that I can upgrade easily or get rid of easily if it's broken to do the same job? Or maybe I don't want somebody hacking my cybernetics and making my eyes glitch out, constantly seeing weird things. I don't know. Just thoughts that were coming to my head when you were saying, "Hey, look, yeah, we might only be 10 years away from having something like a retinal tricorder. Why wouldn't that be there?" Well, I don't know. Maybe there's reasons. I mean, I don't think I would want an internal device like that personally.
Yeah, not if you can get hacked. Definitely not if you can get hacked. Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. I think that's my thought. I'm just spinning off ideas just from that one little sidebar. Maybe that's the sidebars. Every little chunk here are story ideas for you as a game master or as players. You can just build off of them.
Yeah, our sidebars are optional encounters, basically. It's how we designed them. All right. Did you have a different one, Aaron? Or?
No, I'll just go with that. I don't want to take away the fun from everybody here.
Like what was super fun was being able to look at Strange New Worlds and be able to start incorporating some of the stuff that we see on that in the book. So I was able to get I call it sidebar. It's almost full page of transporters as medical treatment. And like 7 different things, but 2 of them happened on Strange New Worlds, like where they teleport the drugs or transport the drugs into Spock, right, to slow down the metamorphosis, and then also the really sad thing with the doctor's daughter being held in pattern buffer stasis. So I was able to get both of those in there as as transporters as medical treatment, which is kind of cool.
Brilliant.
We talked a lot about that together, right, Al? Like, because transporters can be used for so many different things that aren't totally, game breaking, so to speak. And medical treatments for transporters, it totally makes sense. Hey, I need to really get this drug into a very specific part of the body to treat an infection that's deep inside the brain. Well, okay, just use the transporter and get it right to the site. It would be it'd be trivial to do.
Or like the cesarean section, don't even need it. Transport the baby out, right? Things like that are in here, and just cool different ways to use a technology that sometimes we just take for granted. You know what I mean? So
get creative, peeps.
Yeah, and it's tie into that Strange New Worlds thing. I mean, it's been so great. I mean, even though the series is only 20 episodes in totality, like there's a lot of great content there. And I know Nathan baked in some of the stuff from the show right into the first chapter with all the extra mechanical bits. You'll see that the combat stimulants that Mbenga and Chapel used, that's in here. And then he in some of the new career events, he added one for fellowship at an elite institution, which Chapel was chasing a couple of different fellowships, and that's an opportunity for your character to have that career event in their history. So we're certainly trying to fold in all that newer Star Trek stuff in with the old stuff and have it all stand together, right? So you got Next Gen, DS9, original series, and now Strange New Worlds and Discovery and stuff. The other highlight I wanted to mention is take advantage and enjoy. Like if you hearken to our dear friends Brad and Jason over on the Dyson Mind podcast, where they talk about RPGs as literature. If you are a casual Star Trek fan, or you're not even playing the game, but you just want to read this book and just get immersed in some Star Trek, lore, check out the sidebars in each chapter. That's the teal colored sidebars. They're usually near the end of each chapter. I assigned Dayton Ward to write a little bit of a story with different characters, stringing all these sidebars together chapter after chapter, and fold in technology, but also fold in just the adventurous spirit of Star Trek, and tell a little story sidebar by sidebar through the book. And so if you follow each of those sidebars from the beginning to the end, that actually tells a complete story. And Michael, I will be the first to admit it was completely unintentional that I'm playing linear tenon in your game, because tenon turns out pretty well in this little story that Dayton writes through the course of the book. So
he basically becomes another sensor system.
Yeah, basically, yeah, because
which I thought was really cool.
So if you're looking for just a good read, right, and you're not even playing the game, you just need a break, and you just want something fun to read, check out those sidebars and just have fun with it.
Yeah. Back to me, I think one of the things I really enjoy when I see happen in Star Trek is not the action sequences. I think everyone knows that I love the background, what's going on in the background, and I love the mundane. I want to be there. So I'm like, what is a day like in on a ship or in a station? So in page chapter 3 about answering distress calls, I actually did research, because disasters and crises are something we're seeing on the news every single day, right? And I started researching organizations that specialize in disaster response. I did my research on that, did a whole page on it, and then I converted it and took it into the future. So what's it going to look like in the future when you have to do disaster response? If you go to any disaster response agencies, they have three main ways they manage a disaster project: analysis and consultation, design, configuration and assembly, procurement, and logistics. And the point of this was if you're maybe looking for, okay, what's the mission we're currently on before we end up in the main story, you can grab any of these paragraphs and be like, okay, we're on a design, configuration, and assembly mission trying to get supplies for a cetacean planet ready that'll work for them. And then you can go ahead and roll your main mission or whatever, and you still have this premise to work off of. And again, there's a table on planetary crises. So if you need to know, okay, what's the crisis that means they need these disaster relief supplies? And of course, the quote I decided to pull on this one was Star Trek 4 from Dr. McCoy. You're proposing that we go backwards in time, find humpback whales, then bring them forward in time, drop them off, and hope that the hell they tell this probe what to go do with itself. One of my favorite quotes ever of McCoy, right? So I was like, is there actually a planetary crisis episode that I could get a good quote from? I was like, oh, Star Trek 4, it's the ultimate planetary crisis, right? So again, look at these chapters, because as a command or con character, you could be doing this. These are the roles you need to be making. These are the challenges that are baked in, even if it's just organizing and dropping off the right kind of disaster supplies in an environment. So really fun chapter that I had writing. I plan to use a lot of it, the hell out of it, just like McCoy would say. All right. Do we have one more go round in us or what?
Sure.
All right, Aaron.
Oh boy.
One more highlight. We'll go one more round.
One more highlight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I absolutely love the art. I'm gonna have to go back to it because I haven't had a chance to really dive into all the sections to read everything there. But every time I have started, I just sit there and look at the art. I'm looking at this one shot of the Andorian and engineering, and they have their hair tied back in a little tail, and I'm like, I want to hear a story about that, or I want to make a story about that. Is the warp drive sparking there? I can't tell, or is it just really bright? What's happening that's making it glow like that, and people are freaking out? I don't know. I love little hooks like that. So yeah, I know we've already talked about the art. But I don't know. Come on, a Grissom class towing an asteroid.
I know, that's awesome. I love that picture, by the way. I love that picture.
Yeah, who doesn't love little Grissoms? The little starships that could. Come on.
All right, Al, give us one more.
There's like 6 pages of different species weapons in here, maybe even more than that. But like we're talking about every type of phaser, like in Starfleet from 2255 forward, with a description of each. And like it's just so cool that you have that level of detail on a weapon. They all basically have the same mechanics in the game, but now you know like what's powering them, what's this upgrade do. And then it talks about different species, like how is a Romulan's disruptor different from a Klingon's disruptor? What is it? I mean, there's even Hirogen weapons in here. I was like, what?
I liked it too with the different eras. The minute I saw different eras, I was like, ooh, you could do a murder mystery. You could have someone use some old phaser that maybe they pulled out of a museum to create the murder. And so those details in there about how it works would be a fantastic murder mystery in Star Trek, based off the type of weapon that people are selecting.
Yeah, the spectral lines of the particles that were emitted, or whatever. Right. Like, yeah, the distribution of particles, I should say, is indicative of a Klingon disruptor made on Kronos in 2268
right.
through 70.
Right, and there's like an old Klingon who everyone's been ignoring. Like, well, he's the only one who probably had that as his original weapon. That's the DNA on the handle. I love stuff like that.
CSI Starfleet, man.
Yeah. All right, Jim, one more.
I think I wasn't sure if you were going to go there or not, Al, but I think I really appreciate the sidebar that we wrote on how phaser settings work for the purposes of the game, right? So like obviously in canon, you've got, X number of settings for a phaser. Like the next gen ones have 16 different settings. You can start a fire, you can vaporize rock, you can blow up a building. I mean, there's phasers do what the writers needed to do in any given episode. And it's up to us to try to explain how does that work in an RPG, and more importantly, how does that work mechanically? And all the boo birds and naysayers out there who say, "Oh, well, you have a phaser in Star Trek Adventures. What does setting 1 do versus setting 5 do? How does that mechanically work? You just change the damage or whatever?" So Dayton took a crack at a sidebar, and then the more I stared at it, the more I thought, okay, we need to really kind of explain this mechanically. So I went to Nathan. I said, okay, Nathan, we need a sidebar that really, really digs into explaining how phasers work in Star Trek Adventures and makes it feel like it fits in the show. And I think I'll leave it up to public opinion once the fans get their hands on it. I think he did a really good job of explaining how to use the different qualities that are baked into the game and traits, and just like get that story element into it and have it work with the phaser and the phaser settings, as opposed to getting into the weeds about the game not being a simulationist game, and where if you set it to setting 7 versus setting 8, it's not going to change your damage ratings, it's not going to change all the mechanical stuff. So
my very favorite sentence: unorthodox uses of a phaser at the game master's discretion may require the players to create a trait representing an unusual configuration or modulation before it can be used. Love it.
I love that.
And we've done things like that in our game,
yes,
a dozen times. Yeah.
It makes it so fun. It makes players or grognard game masters. It makes it so fun when players get to reinvent what this technology can do, even if it does it only once ever. I mean, it's just so it's something that players talk about forever. There's a special condition wherein it works, and that's basically translating what Al just read.
I mean, we see that all the time on the show, right? I mean,
all the time.
I think especially Next Generation. There were a number of episodes where they would take a freaking communicator, open it up, do a little dinky, and all of a sudden it's a force field.
Right.
How does that work?
It's a transporter enhancer all of a sudden. Yeah, it's true. It's a sensor boy. It can do anything they need it to do.
Right.
Which kind of cracks me up, because I was just watching the first episode of Voyager the other day, and the scene when Paris and Kim go into the medical bay. They've just activated the EMH, and the EMH is running around getting orders. He's like, "Where's the real doctor? The real doctor's dead." He says, "Hand me a tricorder." And someone hands him a tricorder. He went, a medical tricorder. It's like, don't they do the same thing? It's like, really?
Well, yeah.
All right. So,
Michael, what's your last highlight?
Right. My last highlight is I'm going to point one thing I'm seriously irritated about. So I'm sure some of it got cut, but on page 65, New Federation Science, we covered I wrote this, the Borg Collective, Cardassians, Dominion, Illyrians, Klingons, Sicarians. These are things that I said, okay, again, in a whodunit frame of mind, maybe because the way the technology is working or something's going on, then you as a game master can lead the players to attribute like, oh, maybe the Cardassians are involved, or maybe this is Illyrians involved. I know I had more in here, and I know those got cut, but as I was writing these and I was running out of space, I was like, I could do this for every single technology. I wish I could do like Gorn technology, Romulan technology. I wish I could go through all of them and say, because then you can create a real whodunit and give the players, well, here's all the different things of technologies. Who do you think this is more likely to? So I know you did a bunch of cuts on that, Jim.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said at the top of the show, this could have easily been a 300-page, tome of all things technology, and we could have gone for pages and pages and pages. But there's the realities of producing a book means that we had to be a little shorter.
You basically kept one of the species from everyone's favorite show. So for Strange New Worlds, I think that's why you chose Illyrians, and Sicarians were for the Voyager, Borg Collective TNG, Cardassians and the Dominion for Deep Space Nine. So well done. And Klingons, of course, for everywhere. So I thought that was when I was like, well, how did he decide what to go? It's like, okay, there's basically a highlighted species from each show. Right. That's what I'm guessing you did.
And some of the deep cuts for all some of these different sections, like some of the really, really deep cuts, or especially the ones that were really kind of obtuse and would not be obvious to a casual fan. I think those are usually the easy ones to cut, because we have to be careful about our audience, right? I mean, we're not, and like you said, we're not just targeting the diehard grog nerds who've been with the franchise for 40, 50 years. We're trying to target everybody. And it could be, if we put too much of that stuff in there, it could be intimidating to a new fan who'd say, oh, I read it, I don't know what that is, and I don't even know where to start researching it. And I want to draw them in, not pull them away.
Yeah. And shout out to the art on page 66, which looks like some sort of Cardassian archaeological expedition. I think that is a shout out to Connor Self. I don't know if that's your shout out, Jim, but if Connor, if you're listening to this, I personally looked it down. I was like, oh, that's Connor Self's game, who plays a Cardassian archaeologist. And
it wasn't, not intentional. I was actually thinking, I was thinking about how much fun you had writing the art brief for the starter set, that piece of archaeology for the starter set. I was like, oh, we should do another one like that. And Ariel and I thought a Cardassians digging up a Bajoran artifact would be appropriately
cool. Love it.
I do want to give an honorable mention to the back cover, where there's one Starfleet member trudging through the snow, and it looks like there might be an ice monster pursuing them.
I just noticed
red
that.
eyes. I don't know what's going on there, but it's spectacular.
Yeah, I hope at some point, I don't know, at some point after this book launches, maybe on the Discord, maybe I'll put a screenshot of the artwork without the text box on top of it, because I think it got lost a little bit. Because like when I saw the actual piece of art itself, I was like, oh, I love that little bit in the back cover where he's chased by.
So he's trying to get back to his crashed shuttle. Yeah. They don't even know he's approaching, and the monster's coming. Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for this stuff. We got Easter eggs all over the place. Oh. Good catch, Al. Nicely done.
Yep.
Starfleet Herbal Infusion Imbibement Device 2369.
Beverage containers. We have beverage containers here, people. Look at the art. It's pretty cool. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and that's courtesy of Lee Woozy, our graphic designer for this book. He had an opportunity to drop in a little fun Easter eggs of his own as well, and I appreciate he did the layout on the Utopia Planitia, so you'll see some of those Easter eggs in Utopia as well.
The only downside is that the abbreviation for that is SHID. Duh. Right. I said duh on the end.
2 eyes, right? Shit.
All right. I think we're at the gratitude portion of our night. And I think for sure we'll go around. I'll start, then Aaron, Al, Jim, you'll close us out. My gratitude is, of course, going to go to Rick Sternbach, Michael Okuda, all the creator, Doug Drexler, all these people who've taken blood, sweat, and tears to extrapolate and expand on 44-minute TV shows and give us thousands of hours of amazing Technobabble to fuel the imagination. Again, I can only implore all game masters out there, do not tell your players no, say yes and, because any one of you can be the writers of some fantastic technology. I know that our game that I play with Aaron and Al Spader, which is finishing its 5th season now, has created new technologies and new sciences that blow away what we've ever seen on TV. And I wouldn't want it any other way. That's how RPGs should run. So thank you to all the people who spark our imagination and take time to document stuff like this. All right, Aaron, then Al.
I guess I will also put up my technical manual and say, you know, Rick Sternbach and the Akudas also need my gratitude, because I've said before in previous episodes of this podcast that the Star Trek technical manual was the first book I ever bought with my own money from my first job, and I spent hours and days total just reading through this word by word and absorbing it, because I wanted to understand the show, and I loved it so much and everything that it represented, that I just wanted to understand all these beautiful things that humanity could accomplish. And I don't know, it's affected my life in amazing ways. So, you know, gratitude again goes to them.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to be a little bit more self-serving with my gratitude this week, because the Sentience Kickstarter, again, was wildly successful. And I want to thank, first of all, every one of you that are on the screen right now for contributing. Jim, we still have your foreword in the Chronicles of the Awakening book. Michael and Aaron, you both wrote an adventure and a bunch of other stuff for the game. Troy Mepians, Allison Seib, Bill Barbado. We're just the game is just flooded with Star Trek writer talent, and that really means a lot to me, that you all were willing to put your voice on the game that I created. So I wanted to thank each and every one of you that did that.
Always grateful. I think I'll just echo huge thanks to all the prop makers, all the designers, all the set designers, all the scientists, all the people who created this technology way back 60 years ago, and then all the people that advanced it forward. Of course, Michael Okuda, Rick Sternbach, Franz Joseph, Laura Johnson, all the people that started creating these technical manuals for us, all the people that have moved on with the newer publications and have carried it on, and just for sharing your imagination and your creativity, but also your foresight, right? To try to imagine what's technology going to look like 50 years from now, right? What if computers got miniaturized to such an extent that we could carry them around in our hands on like a portable digital screen kind of thing, and actually push button, and it's wireless, right? Like, that's fantastic technology. We had no idea that was going to come, and sure enough, here we are. Years later, we've got pads and phones and all kinds of stuff, and it just the ability of science fiction to deposit what's possible, and then to carry it forward and make it real. I'm always inspired by people who can do that, and especially with Star Trek, to then tell great stories with that technology, and ultimately having that technology serve the person so that the person solves the story, as opposed to the technology solving the story, right? It's a tool, and it's only as useful as as what it's designed to do, as Spock says. Anyway.
Yeah, and speaking of which, right before you finish your thank you, you were talking about the people and the science advisors and all that for the show. This is showing on April 4th, this episode, and I want to tell anyone who's in the Bay Area or visiting the Bay Area, next month, May 4th, Dr. Aaron McDonald is going to be at the Bankhead Theater in Livermore, California. That's about 30 minutes outside of Oakland. I got tickets for me and my geek friends. I'm taking 3 of my RPG group for Star Trek Adventures players to be sitting in the second row. So if any of you there, I'm giving a free plug for Dr. Aaron McDonald at the Bankhead Theater, Livermore, May 4th, 2025. I'm so excited because this will be my first time meeting her. So she's going to sign my captain's log for me, Jim. I already talked to her, and
awesome.
Just want to plug, and that's my way of saying thank you, is by supporting the arts, in this case supporting her public lecture that she's going to be coming out and giving.
Fantastic. All right, I think that covers it for tonight, Michael. I think we good show, good fun. I hope everybody goes out there, checks out the tech manual, enjoy it. Hope it brings many more awesome stories to your campaigns, and that you continue to go boldly.
All right, IDIC.
Live long and prosper, y'all. Be safe, be well. See you next time.